Welcome to another edition of the Crown's Way video newsletter. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, with managing partner Tony Rollo. To my right, Tony, we have a big weekend coming up. Of course, Kentucky Downs, which I know is a meet you always love to not only enter horses in, but also bet as well. So I know you're very enthralled in it. But of course, we have a big runner on Saturday in the Tappet Stakes. I always want to call it the Tepin Stakes, but it's the Tappet Stakes. Tepin's a different thing.
Did she win
With
there?
Vote No. Kentucky Downs, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I know there is a
everywhere
Tepin
else,
stake
so.
somewhere. Yeah, right. No kidding. But of course, we have Vote running Sunday at Kentucky Downs for a little bit of extra interest on your plate.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's outside of Breeders' Cup and Derby weekend, I think the 6 or 7 days at Kentucky Downs are the best betting product that our sport has to offer. It's hard to pick winners, but when you pick them, they pay well. And if you have a horse run well there, they pay well. So
Yeah.
we target it every year. Unfortunately, this year we're a little short on horses at the moment. We only have 4 current racehorses right now, but the 2 that we have are both being targeted for Kentucky Downs.
Yeah, Vote No, of course, starting that off. Then you have Rocket as he's being considered for the Nashville Derby, barring any defections. So we'll see how that turns out. But Vote No is 100% entered and will run on Sunday in the Tappet Stakes. I'll bring up the Equibase right now, and we can take a look at the field for that day. That is on August 30th. It is race number 9, if I'm not mistaken, on Sunday. The $500,000 Tappet Stakes, which is a new distance, which they've never really run at before, with a mile and a 16th out at Kentucky Downs. They usually run that mile and 70 yards type distance, but they've added an extra 16th on the end of it. But of course, it's Kentucky Downs. You're always in for that field of 14. We don't have morning lines yet, so we're not exactly sure what will be. My guess is somewhere probably around where we normally are in that 8 to 10 to 1 range, Tony. There's some nice horses in this race. Of course, Baby Max, which is a fellow Kelsey Danner horse who we've run into a couple times. You have a couple, also a bunch of horses that are cross-entered, so we'll see where they go. We actually on our podcast just did on Saturday. We did the pick 6 on Saturday.
And the tight spot, they're all cross-entered from the tight spot, yeah.
Correct, yeah. I know is one of them. Hiding in Honduras, Lambeth, West Hollywood. So there's a ton of cross entries. So we'll see where they end up going. But Mercante, a horse we faced plenty of times before, and some interesting entrants. But you always get that in Kentucky Downs, Tony, where a lot of these horses may not necessarily be fully meant for the turf, but with the money at stake, it's always the connections always love to take a chance.
Yeah, no, it's a weird race to try to figure out. I think it's a pretty even match race.
It is. Very.
A lot of the horses coming out of that Green River at Ellis that we just ran 5th in. But no, I think we fit in it really well. We got a really good number from that Green River, considering the trip we got. I didn't even see the buyer. I'm just talking about buyer was a 91. So yeah, close to his or tied for its yearly high. I think that number, I think we can improve on that number a little bit, but that number probably puts us right in the ball game. And another thing to think about is, Kentucky Downs being quirky with the right hand and left-handed turns. It takes a certain horse to like it there, and Vote likes it there. I mean, he's 1 for 3 over there, and the biggest win of his career all the way back in his 2-year-old year was at Kentucky Downs.
Yeah, and this is, of course, after you wanted to buy him at the sale and didn't get him. And then, of course, he goes and runs in the juvenile sprint at Kentucky Downs, winning with Gerardo Corrales aboard. That was when he was back in the Bill Morley barn, or Big Bill Morey, excuse me. Tom Morley is who I get those two mixed up all the time, to be completely honest. And then we end up with him anyway, Tony. And, of course, he's done very well for us. Yeah, there's a bunch of horses coming out of that Green River Island Stakes. Native Runner who ran second. He ran a big second. Who actually boxed us in or kept us at bay. Mercante, Lambeth, Flying Mohawk, just a couple to add in there as well. So Umberto Rispoli, that's who else I want to talk about, Tony. Of course, Vote, just like a lot of other of our horses in the past, have been kind of bouncing back and forth between a bunch of jockeys. They never really had their set jockey Luis Saez actually has Flying Mohawk just to the inside. Just explain a little bit with Umberto Rispoli and what the decision was to go with him.
Yeah, I've been targeting Umberto for vote no for a while now. I believe we tried to get him on for the Schuster at Indiana, and he was listed on other horses that day. He ended up not coming and didn't ride anything that day at Indiana. But I mean, a very qualified rider. He's won the Preakness on journalism, and one of the things I really like about having him from here is being a European rider. Yeah. Those guys have ridden this kind of track. That's what they grew up riding, where our American riders only see it once a year. Umberto now only sees it once a year, but grew up riding on this style of turf course. So it should be a good fit, hopefully a good trip. I was texting with John from NBS earlier today, and we were laughing about the bad trips he's had. Well, maybe the lucky number 13 is going to turn it around for us in here.
Yeah, that's funny that I actually wanted to bring that up too. Umberto, I actually really like him, especially on the turf. He's always been a great turf rider out west since coming over from Italy, I believe, and then he rode over in the UK for a little bit as well. So Umberto does a great job. I mean, we see it all the time. Like last year when Frankie Dettori was still riding in the States, was having a pretty tough, meet out in California. Come to Kentucky Downs, where he's been so good overseas at these types of circuits, and he won at like 25%, obviously winning a bunch of and that's always a nice payday if you can win 25% of your races at a Kentucky Downs. So you see how it happens all the time. Yeah, and Umberto Rispoli, the thing about Umberto too is he likes to work out these trips that we've seen. He's a very nice rider on the inside, tips out when needed, but can also hit the hole on the inside. Very versatile rider. So I do like Umberto for a horse like Vote No, who does seem to find himself in trouble a decent amount of the time. And Tony, you mentioned it, 91, 89, 89, 91, but every single one of those trips, arguably besides the Louisville, where maybe he's just not a mile and a half horse anymore, he's had trouble in all three of those starts. So if he takes another step forward, maybe back to somewhere like United Nations or Cape Henlopen numbers, he absolutely could be a winning contender in here.
Yeah, I mean, and I looked at the Brisnet numbers. He fits in there. I think they had him listed third on Prime Power. So he belongs in this kind of group. And hopefully he's been saving all that luck for when he's running for the big money.
And that would be fantastic, not only for us, of course, but for the partners. And before we move on to a little pin hooking, and we'll do an Around the Barn segment, just to give you guys a quick look at what we're facing here in the Tapit Stakes. See, I know, who I mentioned is cross-entered, ran a 90 last time. Native Runner, who he ran against in the Green River Island, ran a 93 in that race. Ancient Rome is really the kind of toss-up in here as he is coming over from overseas, but we have seen him before a couple of years ago when he came over to ride at Kentucky Downs, finished 7th to Goliad, who was a nice front-end runner. Clever Mischief ran an 88. Baby Max ran a 91. 87 for Lambeth, but does have the 96 and 97. For Jose Ortiz, also is cross-entered. 91 for Hunting in Honduras. Mercante ran a 90 in the Green River Island, but has run better in the past. Smoky Mandate 92, West Hollywood 91, at Brumar 91, Flying Mohawk 93, 94, but ran 85 last time. So we have a 91. We also have 96 and 98 on the page, Tony. So we really do fit. It's a very even race across the board, as we've already mentioned. So good luck to not only Vote, but also all the partners as well. Hopefully you can run a big one again, as the Tapit Stakes is worth $500,000. Ladies and gentlemen, next thing we'll talk about here is we'll talk about our pin hooking group. Tony, we bought 2 horses out of the Saratoga sale. Of course, partnered again with Tom McCrocklin, who did so well for us last year at the OBS sale, getting these horses ready and put into the sale. 2 horses, hip number 52 and hip number 71. We'll talk about 52 first, of course. This on your screen right now is a nice chestnut colt, Elite Power out of Protect, who was actually a nice, was unplaced, but still nice breeding, is Tapit on the backside as well. So nice breeding there from the dam. But Tony, what'd you like most about the number 52 chestnut colt, who I know was on your list when you were looking?
Yeah, I just thought he was a physical freak. I'm very high on Elite Power as this year's top freshman, or as next year's freshman stallion class. Elite Power was a really, really nice Breeders' Cup winner and champion, and this horse looks like his father. Um, and yeah, I was very, very high on this one. I literally made a list of about 10 or 15. I didn't share it with Tom to see if there was any crossover, and this one was on my list, and he was obviously on Tom's list as we stepped up and bought this horse for 375,000.
Yeah, and of course, as we had such good luck last year with this, of course, now the more and more we do this, the bigger the budget can get, right?
Mhm.
So 375,000 truly in the budget, are and shares are still available, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I'm gonna keep shares open probably till October 1st. It'd be great if we can raise a little bit of money before the Keeneland sale, just so I know what we have to spend at the Keeneland sale. So right now we're right about where our budget was last year, just from our returning partners. We haven't picked up very many new partners, and we spent pretty much the budget for what we have raised so far on these two horses. So obviously, if we're going to get it back to a 5 to 7 horse group, I'd like to raise in the ballpark of another 150,000. Shares remain at 10,000. Returning partners can buy in 5,000 increments. Can buy for half shares, and yeah, just reminder, we turned 118% last year. I think the market and selling these unraced horses is as good as it was last year. So
Yeah.
knock on wood, we keep these horses healthy, and we should be able to turn another big return in 2027.
Yeah, and you mentioned Elite Power. Hopefully, he can bring his prowess to his progeny because, man, was that especially later in his career, the horse was untouchable at the sprinting distance. And the hip number 71, Tony, is another one we bought. This is a essential quality horse out of Secret Passion, has arch on the back end. So distance, thinking for this one, a nice gray colt that I'll put up on the screen right now.
Yeah, essential quality obviously was a champion racehorse in his own right. I think he was champion 3-year-old. And this is one from, I think this is crop 2 or crop 3 of essential quality. I think it's crop 2.
Mm-hmm.
But Tom loved this horse. Said he walked like a cat, very light on his feet, which is something that kind of shows you that you don't want a big, heavy horse that hits the ground so hard. And this horse hits the ground very lightly. Kind of reminds us a little bit of that Ghost Sapper filly that we bought for 150 last year and sold for 775.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can,
750.
if we can do the same thing with a horse like this, that would be another home run. And yeah, we very much like him.
So again, guys, if you guys are all interested, this is straight for, selling for profit at the sale in March. Again, email Anthony Rollo at crownswayracing.com for any interest you guys have in the pinhooking group. Again, we'll also go to the Keeneland sale, which comes up here in about just over a month, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't it right before the
Like
the Keeneland meet? 3
I think
weeks?
it's like
Yeah.
3 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, so that makes I know it's right before the Keeneland meet starts. I actually just didn't know when, to be completely honest, and that'll be a host fail on my part. But again, Anthony Rollo at crownswayracing.com for any interest to get into, again, what was 118% profit last year for the pinhooking group. Last thing we'll talk about, Tony, then we'll end the video newsletter. Of course, the barn, unfortunately, has been shrinking, but there's plenty still to go around. The 4 horses that we have in the barn between the Hund, Gopher Rocket, who we will talk about here in a little bit. We talked about Vote No, and then of course the last horse that always slips my mind in Crown the Lady, the brand new 2-year-old.
Yeah, so Crown the Lady and the Hund have both been turned out for a little bit of a fall freshening. Both dealing with some bone bruising, very common in young horses. Hund had dealt with it last year and is again dealing with it a little bit this year. His is a little bit more serious than Crown the Ladies, so he's going to get probably a 60-day break, and we'll target a Turfway return for him. Crown the Lady, just typical 2-year-old bone bruising. No issue. She was a horse that's going to want to run long on the dirt anyways, and we're not going to see that for a while. So I told Kelsey, let's not push forward on her right now. Let's take our time with her and set her up for a big 3-year-old season. So she's going to get 30 days and then return back to Kelsey's barn, and that will probably also be looking at a um, Turfway debut for her. We are going to sell shares in her starting now at $500. Originally, we were talking about the same $5,000 buy-in, but we do have some shares remaining. We have $35,000 left to sell in her. Once those are sold, that's it. So we can sell those to the smaller people that play at the smaller level in $500 increments just to get her sold. And the partners will have some money coming back with the closing of D with the Otago claim. E, not so much, as Shards was retired and that group was about out of money. But F, which ended on the Bucks Howell winning claim, also will have money returning. So anyone that was in groups D and F I will be reaching out to with a figure as far as what your number was. And then if you guys want to re-up that money into pinhooking, Crown the Lady, or some, as Courtney told me to remind everyone, the merch is still on sale. So these hats are definitely, we have a lot of these in stock. And then the polos, we'll make them as they're ordered. So that's what's going on with those horses and those closing groups. So, and then the only one left to talk about is Go for Rocket. As Kyle had mentioned, we're on the also eligibles for the Nashville Derby, kind of waiting to see if we get invited. If we're not invited, there's also an allowance race on September 5th, the same day as the Nashville Derby. So if we don't get in the Nashville Derby, our plan is to enter that allowance race. And then also we have the Old Dominion on September 7th as a fallback option. So it's very, very likely that Rocket will run next week. Just the race and the location is still TBD. Ideally, if he gets into the Nashville Derby, that's where we'll be going.
And so Nashville Derby is 3.5 mil, something in the asinine rank.
Yeah.
The allowance is, I mean, for even an allowance race, it's still in the asinine rank. I think it's like 200,000 or something like that, just for a level allowance race. And then the Old Dominion Derby is 500,000 if I remember correctly. Correct. So lots of exciting things, of course, for Rocket. Again, I think it's going to be like Nashville Derby, allowance race, and then Old Dominion Derby based on the ranking.
I would probably put the allowance in the Old Dominion pretty much
even
at a dead heat right now. We'll see how he's doing next week, and obviously talk about if we want to ship all the way to Colonial or if it just makes more sense to stay at home in the bluegrass. And then, the only other one that we still had to talk about was Mancuri, was also claimed from the claiming group. And this is something you and I had talked about. It's kind of an in and out process. So we'll be looking for one to replace her. We did drop a claim this week on a horse named Shadow Coast, and we're outshook on that horse. So we'll still be firing away at the claim box too. The claiming game in Kentucky kind of takes a little break right now with Kentucky Downs, but it'll be back in full force at Churchill.
Yep. And we started this, Tony, when we first started the group, it was always about, that's why T-Lore is so important. That's why we started the partnership with T-Lore. It's because these horses are going to be in and out. It's fantastic when you get a horse like Go for Rocket, to where the horse will stay in the barn for a long time, again, knock on wood. But many of them are going to be like Mancari, where they're in, out, just try and, pick up a check, pick up a race win. And if they leave, they, feel bad, but you wave by and hopefully something comes in next and there'll be another Go for Rocket. So that's always going to be the goal of the claiming group.
Exactly.
So there's a ton of things. Again, get in that T-Lore first, last name, all caps. Fantastic tool to always recognize which horses you have, especially with the claiming group. If you're a part of it, these horses will be in and out. Tony, I'll leave you with the final word. Again, pin hooking, email Anthony Rollo at crownswayracing.com. You can also email Kyle Roscoe at crownswayracing.com with any questions, comments, or concerns. I know you talked about going to Kentucky Downs which you always make the yearly drive. It seems like every single year down to just outside of Nashville. So anything you want to leave the partners with, and that one in the newsletter.
Yeah, if any partners are looking to come, I know we already have a group going for this weekend. I have not had any confirmations for next weekend. If Rocket runs there next weekend, I'll be there again next weekend. I'll spend as much time as Kentucky Downs as possible. So we'll be there if anyone would like to make the trip out. And yeah, hopefully we get some luck with Vote No. I feel good about this one going into it. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned he has that win over Kentucky Downs. Anything for that money is always welcome. If you can win at Kentucky Downs, the money will be coming back to you. But good luck to all the partners this weekend. For managing partner of Crownsway Racing, Tony Rollo to my right. I guess technically my left, I guess, if I'm looking that way. But either way, managing partner Tony Rollo. I've been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in what has been the August 26th edition of the Crownsway Video Newsletter. Good luck over the next 2 weeks with Vote No and Go for Rocket.